Hey, everybody. Welcome to Northpointe Plus. I have Rick here, who is...
Good morning, Trent. How are you?
I'm doing so good
It's the day after Easter that we're recording this.
This is the day after, and this is my first Northpointe Plus. So far,
Oh, really?
I have done Northpointe Conversations. I've done Rubilations, otherwise known as
Random
Reflections with Rick. So this is my first Northpointe Plus.
Welcome to Northpointe Plus.
Thank you for letting me host this coveted position.
You're standing in for Sylvia, who is ill today.
No, that stinks. Sorry, Sylvia.
Sylvia, if you're watching, we miss you.
We do miss you.
But we're glad that Trent can stand in for you.
That's right. And we were happy that you were here with us on Easter. So
that's right.
Hopefully nobody else got sick
from
church during Easter as well. So Rick, tell us, Easter Sunday was an awesome Sunday celebrating. I had a blast. All the services were full.
Yeah. It was a very, very cool day. It was different for me in that Deb is out visiting our kids. This week is their spring break for our grandkids in Massachusetts. So Deb left last Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
So I was by myself on Easter Sunday.
Oh my goodness.
Which was okay. It was actually okay, fine, because it was good for naps and some of the stuff that doesn't always get done. But I had lunch with our two kids who are local on Saturday before that. So it was just a good day. But here it was terrific. We had 3 services. All 3 services were really, really full. Mm-hmm. We had over 1,000 people. Probably when it's all said and done, it'll be a little bit over 1,100.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest Easter in attendance that we've had in the 11 years that I've been here, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. It was the biggest attendance since I've been here for an Easter. So
yeah, that's true.
This is great. Yeah.
It can only go up from here for you.
Let's hope.
Trent.
That's right.
Attendance is just a measure, I think, to say how's God working and what's going on. Yeah. And that means that people are having conversations and that people are looking for answers. I think it's a big family day, but man, we had a lot of people who were here for the very first time, and great conversations. And I felt like the service, it was a different kind of service for me because I'm usually down, in the front row. And so I hear everyone sing and I'm right in the middle of the drums almost. And so I'm really captured in worship time. And this particular week I was back in the hallway in the wings.
Yeah.
Waiting for my time because Jake and I shared the message. Mm-hmm. And we changed some things with the service. So it was a little bit different format. We wanted to do that to have the time of worship at the end and really have the celebration of the resurrection come at the end, because we've been in this series where we've been talking about the 7 last words of Jesus on the cross. And so to talk about that, typically the whole message, everything is about the celebration of the resurrection. Yeah. But because the message really focused on those last words of Christ, we felt like we needed to kind of push the resurrection end of it, push towards the resurrection, but have that be the end of the service. So it was a different kind of service. But what'd you think?
I thought it was awesome. When the amount of people that asked me about technical problems when Jake hits the stand, and then they realize, this was planned. It had this really cool impact because you do have to reflect. I mean, you do that from Good Friday all the way up to Sunday.
Right.
But you do have to reflect on it right then and there. I thought it was awesome because it allowed you to go into this really awesome celebratory opportunity to where you are worshiping and reflecting, and the excitement just kept building throughout the service, which I thought was really cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
It was fun as we talked about it and talked about what we wanted to do. The blackout, as we planned for it, and then as it happened, I felt like there was something really powerful in the simplicity of the darkness to begin to read about what it would have been like for Mary, for the Marys, to come and to be going to the tomb in the darkness.
Yeah.
I thought it was just kind of a cool experiential moment, and then to really push towards the whole idea of the message really was Jake focused on "it is finished," on the word tetelestai, and that meant that the work was done. That what Jesus wasn't saying his life was done; he was saying that the work was being completed for salvation to take place. Incredible concept. I actually talked to two people who just this last week got tattoos that said tetelestai.
Oh, wow.
Which really, really fun. Anyway, push towards that. But then what I really wanted to do out of the resurrection was to just communicate to people, your story's not done yet.
Yeah.
Jesus' story wasn't done on the cross when he died. The resurrection, even at the resurrection, his story wasn't done because his story is now 2,000 years old, and will last into eternity. And so I think for a lot of people, regardless of what their circumstances are, when they're in crisis, they think this is the way that it's always going to be. And if it's bad, that's devastating and really depressing to think, oh, my relationship with my friend is broken and it's never going to get fixed.
Yeah.
Oh, I've lost this person that I love, and that hole in my heart is never going to get fixed. And what I wanted to communicate that I think is the power of the resurrection is that your story's not done.
Yeah.
That the resurrection brings hope and a look towards the future to say, you know what, all I need to do is really kind of put one foot in front of the other and just keep going and knowing and hang on to the truth, regardless of how I feel, that the story's not done yet.
Yeah. Well, the "it is finished" piece, the encouragement is he took the wrath of God that we were supposed to receive. That's done. Like he took it on. But we have a God who's so loving and so gracious that he's patient. And he's patient with us.
Yeah.
And so, you hear a lot of people talk about why isn't everything just done? Why can't he just come back? And it's like, well, there's a lot of people that still need to hear this message.
Right.
And to know that we have a patient God who's willing for that message to get to everybody, and he's patient with me and he's patient with you.
Yeah.
And that's an encouraging thing, because when we do go through, like, I know Katie and I, we've talked about different times. We're like, man, life is so much harder than we thought.
To be 10 years old again, right?
It's
the worst thing you have to worry about is that you didn't do your homework.
And it's hard, and you talk to people and they're like, life is hard.
Yeah.
And it's true. But when you have this hope, when you have this understanding that Jesus paid it all,
right,
and I have a salvation with him, no matter how difficult this life gets, the end will come. My hope is in him. All things will be made right. All the justice that I get frustrated that has not been satisfied will be satisfied.
Yeah.
And we can rest in that. And so to know that the story isn't done for us.
Right.
And that we have time to continue to share what Christ has done in our lives with other people. Go out and do that. We have, we've talked about this on staff, you talk with the older generation that have kids who maybe have walked away from the church, and just there's a high number of parents struggling that are empty nesters as they've watched their kids walk away from the faith.
Yeah.
And to be able to encourage them and say, listen, there's time. God's at work. He is moving. He is, trust in what he's doing. That's an important part of this story that you and Jake shared on Sunday, is recognizing the work is, there's still more to the story.
And we can't see everything that's going on. We can only see what's on the surface, which is, it's hard. When I was telling the story of Brandon, it's hard to contextualize, because I'm thinking as I'm telling the story, some people might be thinking that our friends they must have had a bad relationship with him for him to not talk about what was going on spiritually. Yeah. But that was just Brandon's nature. He was a pretty reserved and introverted person with most people, including his parents, but not with his closest friends. And so he was having conversations with his friends on an incredibly deep level that that maybe just doesn't happen naturally with parents. But God was working, even though our friends didn't know what was going on until he was, dying in the hospital,
Yeah.
and even after his death. It's funny because as we talked about this, as we planned for this message, I wanted to tell the story of Brandon because when we were talking with our friends, they actually said, well, yeah, we were in despair because it was like his story's done. Mm-hmm. His life is over. His story's done, and the things that we had hoped for never materialized. Mm-hmm. But then they saw it played out that it had materialized in a way that was probably far greater than they ever anticipated. But there was that story, and there just wasn't enough time because I wanted to tell the story of Diane Mosher, who's somebody here in our area. She was the clerk for Clinton or for DeWitt Township for 20 years, or whatever. I did her funeral, and I've told this story. I've referenced it before. I did her funeral 3 years ago now, and she came to church occasionally. We had a good relationship. She and her husband Jim, but it was like when the service was done, okay, what do we do with that? And then it was a year later that Diane's granddaughter and what do I want to say, stepdaughter-in-law had been coming to church, and then the granddaughter and the mom and the stepdaughter-in-law were baptized. Stacy and Samuel Lamachia, and then Morgan's sister was baptized, and then cousin Wilder Vlasic was baptized, and then Wilder's now baptized 5 of her friends. And there's the high school group that is up towards the front on the left-hand side at the 9:30 service. To a large degree, that all points back to God working in Diane's death in the Lamachia family, and that's a pretty amazing thing because you think when someone dies, oh, that's the end of their life, their story's done, and yet Diane's impact the ripples continue to flow, and it's hard to describe how powerful it is to see 20, 25, whatever it is, high school kids worshiping, fully engaged in worship, taking notes during the messages. It's a really cool thing, and I often say to Morgan and Sammy and to Wilder, well, not Wilder, to Avery, one of the other granddaughters. Their grandma has to be incredibly pleased in the presence of God to see what's happened because her life was cut short from our perspective. The story's not done yet.
Yeah, and we don't know what God's going to do. Like, I think it's a testament to our call is obedience.
Right.
And when we're obedient, God will work through that, whether we're here or not. you know, and so whether it's through the legacy, I know the women's studies been going through Colossians, and they were talking about Paul's ending, and just some of the characters that are in there that have just tiny roles and stuff, but like just the one guy he was the one who delivered the letter, and Paul entrusted him with the letter, and like had he not gone, his name would have never been written down, and like. We're still reading this letter.
2,000 years later.
2,000 years later.
We know his name.
And so just to be obedient, even though sometimes we might feel like the task is menial or, is this really going to make an impact? A lot of people, we talk about that, like how we want to have an impact. But we all like, how can we really affect some of these things that seem so big?
Yeah.
But we serve a big God. And when we're obedient, he multiplies it. And it might be, we might not even recognize the person who is off in the distance that's just observing.
Right.
From an outside perspective. And how many people, maybe they've come here to Northpointe because they saw somebody from Northpointe and realized that person's different. I wonder what that's about.
Right.
And I bet you there's a lot of stories like that.
Yeah, so. and I don't think that we'll know those stories. No. We'll hear those stories until eternity. But I think around the throne of God there will be this sense that it's like, oh, we'll be able to start connecting dots and seeing how God worked and how people that we may not even know impacted our journey and how our faith then impacted others, which is a really pretty incredible thing.
Yeah. And I'd encourage you guys that be on mission. Like when you leave this building, be intentional, be on mission, go out and just love people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing what that simple action does when you're just intentional about loving people around your neighborhood, loving people around your workplace, loving people in all the different places that in the grocery store, when you're checking out.
Yeah.
How that has an impact.
It is funny because I think the calling that we have is to be faithful, to just be faithful. And we tend to want to see an immediate reaction to whatever our behavior is. So if I do X, if I egg my neighbor and put the sign in, I want them in the next 3 weeks to start to come to church and their lives to be impacted by Jesus. I think in reality, when we're faithful at each step, we don't know how long it is. Sometimes it happens really fast. Sometimes it doesn't happen for a really long time. But the key is being faithful. I've thought, as I am kind of in the home stretch before the transition out of my role as lead pastor, and I look at what's going on at Northpointe and see, again, the numbers represent people, so they matter. But the numbers themselves, what's a number? Anyway, all that to say, I think, why is it that right now we're growing in a way that we haven't grown in the last with the pandemic, it's easy to know why we didn't grow during that time. But why is it that what is it that we're doing different now? I don't know that we're doing anything different now, but I think seeds that have been planted over time have grown, they've budded, and they're beginning to harvest in a way that's really, really cool. And as somebody who's just trying to be faithful to God, that's a really, really fun thing for me to just be able to look around and see, oh man, God's working in so many ways.
Yeah, that's awesome. As we keep going through the sermon and some of the things that you guys talked about, we did get a question. The question was, don't cling to me, for I have not ascended to the Father. What did Jesus mean by this statement?
So if you can kind of picture in your mind what's going on, Mary is there. She's the tomb's empty. She interacts with the angels. The angels say, "Who are you looking for?" She said, "If they've taken his body, if you can tell me where it is, I'll go get it. I'll take care of it." Because they come ready to embalm his body, ready to treat his body with the spices. And then she comes out, and there's somebody standing there. She thinks it's the gardener, and it's actually Jesus. And when Jesus says her name, I think the inflection of his voice and his voice, it was like the light turned on, and she knew at that point that it was Jesus. She didn't. You may say, how could she not know it was Jesus? Well, I think it was the farthest thing from her mind. That's if you think about seeing someone that you know, but in a completely different context, it's like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
I think she was so consumed with grief. She'd just seen the angel. There's so many things going through her mind. She's just talking to a person.
Yeah.
When he says her voice, she realizes it's him, and the scripture says that she grabbed his feet. I said hugged. Well, in one of the services at least, I said, "Don't hug me," because I think that's the picture there that she wanted to have. To tangibly express her love. And Jesus says something powerful. There are two things I think that are going on in that. One is that she could touch Jesus. That's a pretty powerful thing. It's what happens then on Sunday night when Jesus says to Thomas, put your finger in the holes in my hand, put your hand in my side. So she could touch him. That's a pretty powerful thing. I think that she wanted in that tangible expression to have some reassurance and in a very earthly kind of way, to think, oh, he's back. this is good. Everything's going to be great. And what Jesus was reinforcing was, you know what? This is just a second in the story, and the rest of the story is that I'm going to go be in my Father's presence, in the presence of my God, your God. You guys get this. It's not about what happens right now. It's about what's going to happen as I ascend, and as I interact with the rest of the disciples in the next few weeks. And then she goes off to tell the disciples. I think that Jesus was really saying to her, this moment is really important, but we don't live just for this moment. There's lots more to do.
Yeah. I think it goes back to kind of what we've been talking about, where sometimes we get so caught up in just reflecting, or maybe even just we come and we're at church, we're doing it's like there's work to be done.
Yeah.
There's a message to go share. Like there's more happening. And as Jesus goes and ascends, it would be really difficult. I mean, I've reflected on this. It'd be really difficult to be like, okay, he said this is better, but he just left.
Yeah.
He's gone. And to realize, like, when you lean on him, the work that he's continuing to do and entrusting us to do, it's easy to keep looking and being like, all right, Jesus, we're waiting for you to do this and do this and do this. And he will do it and he can do it. But a lot of times he's calling us.
Yes.
You go and tell people what you just saw. Go tell people how it impacted you. Go share the gospel. And God works through that, through his Spirit. And instead of just stand here and stay in the moment. Sometimes we want to just stay in church and stay in the moment. But we got to remember, when church is done, we need to go.
Yeah.
We need to go out. And I think that's a really important thing for us to keep reminding ourselves, is it's not just about being in that moment, but taking that moment and using the Spirit that he sent to us to go empower people.
Yeah, it's funny. I keep hearing lyrics to a song in my head, and the song was from the early era of contemporary Christian music. It was a song that was written by Chris Christian, and maybe the reason I can hear the lyrics is because this was a song I sang back in the 70s and 80s, whatever. And the title of the song was Mountaintop. It was written by Chris Christian, and it said, I love to live on the mountaintop, fellowshipping with the Lord. And then it goes on and says, but I can't stay on the mountaintop. I've got to get to the people in the valley below.
Yeah.
And that there is this sense that we really do want to just kind of live in the moment of God's goodness. Mm-hmm. But there is and that is good. Don't discount
absolutely.
that. But that leads us to action and interaction with the world to be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah. It is amazing when you have those mountaintop experiences. You go to a conference, you have that church service where it just speaks to you.
Where you can feel the presence of God tangibly.
You're convicted by it. You get moved by it, and in the midst of it, you feel the sense of, I need to do something. Like you feel the empowerment. Like you feel it, and I think we get frustrated because you go a week down the road, and then it's like all of that stuff maybe starts to fade a little bit more because you get further away from the mountain. Moses comes down and everybody's partying and worshiping another idol, and then you realize, oh, this is very different than the experience that I just had.
Yeah.
and I think one of the mistakes that we run into, I think it's human nature, is we get so frustrated. Like, how do you guys not understand? Because we just experienced this other thing, and yet how often we're the same way, where it's like God just keeps showing us grace, and we're getting like,
If I jump back into my music professor days, one of the things that relevant to what you're talking about right now is that I think we tend to think those moments where we experience God's presence, oftentimes there's music related. There's a song or multiple songs that really help reach deeply into our soul. God's presence is there. And so what we want to do is keep going back to that song over and over and over again. And we do, and that's why at every generation, it's like, why can't we just sing "How Great Thou Art"? Because I experienced God's presence with "How Great Thou Art," or it only takes a spark to get a fire going. Pass it on in the 60s and 70s, or whatever, Majesty, or whatever it is in each era. We think, why can't we just sing that? Because God's presence was there then. And yet you go to Scripture, and over again, particularly in the Psalms, there is this admonition, this challenge: sing to the Lord a new song, sing to the Lord a new song, sing to the Lord a new song, because His mercies are new every morning.
Yeah.
And so it's not to go back and rekindle the experience of the past, but to say, let me hear from God today, and let that impact my life today in such a way that I can impact others.
And He's a creative God.
Yeah.
Like, you think about, like, you go to a conference, and you're like, all right, I hope this is like the last one. But the reality is like, you actually want something different.
Right.
You don't realize you want something different until you experience the thing that's different. You're like, man, He showed up again, but it was so different than the last experience that I had. And I think you continue to get clarity, and you continue to get direction. One of the other parts, I think with Mary too, where she doesn't hear, Jesus is speaking to her. She doesn't recognize it's Him. And then He says it again.
Yeah.
And it's like, how often we feel frustrated because you hear this regularly. Jesus, I don't hear Him. And you find out, so often that, man, He was actually speaking the whole time.
Well, I don't know if you noticed or not, but the phrases that were up on the slides, I did that intentionally as I'm reading through the resurrection story to just highlight that this was not what they expected at all. Yeah. And the scripture that comes later in John, where it says that they just didn't understand, it didn't make any sense to them because they didn't. Why didn't it? Because the idea of a resurrection wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't even on their minds, even though Jesus had said over and over again,
Yep.
You know what, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna be buried. 3 days later, I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna restore the temple. All of that. That whole process, I wanted to kind of subtly with the slides just reinforce this is not what they were anticipating.
Yeah.
It's not like they came on Sunday morning thinking, "Oh yeah, it's Easter."
It's time.
They were still in deep grief and mourning, and it's so interesting to me to think what the events of that morning were, with an earthquake, with the veil in the temple being torn in two, with dead people walking around. Scripture says graves opened up. Just it was pretty crazy what was going on that day as Jesus was resurrected.
Yeah. That's would have been something else to just be in that environment and to watch it all play out.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you wanted to share about the sermon, about Sunday?
No, it was a great day. Thank you for everybody. Parents. We did a giveaway for kids this week in children's ministry. Sent a book home, and I would just encourage you to use that book with your child to help teach them about Jesus. Don't let that sit on a shelf, but let that be something that you use at bedtime, that you use in the morning, whatever it is, to help your child begin to love Scripture and to hear from God at whatever age they're at as well. We hope that gift was a blessing, and that it can transform your family as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Rick. Appreciate you sharing some more, and we look forward to seeing you guys at the next one.